In the busy city of Lagos, Nigeria, a young girl named Ada sat at the breakfast table with her mother, Mrs. Odo. Her mother leaned close and spoke in a firm but gentle voice. Ada, remember, don't take food from strangers. I heard on the news that kidnappers are using food to lure children, Mrs. Odo warned her. Ada nodded, though she didn't fully understand. Her father, Mr. Odo, overheard and laughed. Ngozi, don't scare the girl with such stories, he chuckled. But then he grew serious. But she's right, Ada. It's best to be careful. Only eat what we give you, all right? Yes, Daddy, Ada replied. She finished her breakfast, hugged her parents, and left for school. At the bus stop, she waited quietly, her mother's words ringing in her head. A man in a bright shirt walked over and smiled kindly. Hello there, little one, he said, holding out a small candy. Would you like something sweet to pass the time? Ada looked at him and politely shook her head. No, thank you, sir. The man's smile faded a little, but he stepped back and watched as her bus pulled up. Ada got on and sat by the window, glancing at the man who was still staring at her as the bus drove away. At school, Ada met her friend Kemi during lunch. Kemi held out a lunchbox filled with spicy, steaming jollof rice. Here, Ada. I don't feel like eating today. You can have it. Kemi offered her with a big smile. Ada's stomach grumbled, but she remembered her mother's warning. No, thanks, Kemi. I already ate, she replied, even though her stomach still felt a little bit empty. Kemi's smile faded. Why don't you want it? We are best friends, aren't we? Yes, we are, Kemi, Ada said softly, but she didn't take the food. On her way home, Ada saw an elder woman struggling with a large basket of tomatoes and yams from the market. Without thinking twice, she ran over to help. Oh, thank you, my dear, the woman said, beaming at her. Together, they carried the heavy basket to a parked car. Let me give you a ride home, the woman offered. It's the least I can do to thank you. Ada hesitated, but the woman looked so kind. She nodded, and they drove the short way to her house. As Ada got out, the woman handed her a chocolate bar. For you, dear, you have been so helpful. Ada's heart skipped. I shouldn't take it. The woman laughed gently. Take it, sweetheart. You're already home, and I'm no kidnapper. Ada finally accepted it and ran inside. At home, she sat at the table and unwrapped the chocolate bar, her mouth watering. Just as she was about to take a bite, her mother stormed in, her face full of shock. She slapped the chocolate out of Ada's hand and it flew across the room. Ada! Who gave you that? She yelled, her voice shaking with anger and fear. Ada started to cry, unable to answer. Her father came in, drawn by the noise. Ngozi, what is this fuss about? He asked sternly. It's just a chocolate bar. How would that lead to a kidnapping in our own house? But Ada's mother looked troubled, and Ada didn't dare say another word. Days passed, and every day at lunch, Kemi offered Ada food, and every day Ada refused. But Kemi's smile slowly turned cold. You don't appreciate me, do you? She said one day. You think I'm not good enough to share with? Ada felt a pang of guilt. Kemi kept trying to convince her. No one will ever know. Not your mother. Not anyone. Don't you trust me? Finally, Ada sighed and took a bite of Kemi's jollof rice, hoping her mother wouldn't find out. That night, as Ada slept, strange dreams filled her head. She tossed and turned, then suddenly woke up to find Kemi standing beside her bed, dressed in a red robe. Kemi, Ada whispered, but her voice was trapped. Kemi's eyes gleamed as she reached out her hand. Ada, she said softly, come with me. Without knowing why, Ada found herself standing, following Kemi out of the house. Kemi's voice was soft and hypnotic as she chanted strange words, and in a blink, they disappeared from the room. When Ada opened her eyes, they were in a dark hall, filled with figures dressed in red robes. A circle of witches and wizards watched her silently. Her heart pounded as she recognized some of the faces. There was the man from the bus stop, his eyes gleaming with a dark light. And in the center, Kemi's face shimmered and transformed. She became the beautiful woman from the market. Her smile still as sweet, but now twisted with something darker. Ada felt a chill run through her. But then, her heart broke as she saw a figure standing in the shadows. Mama? She whispered, eyes wide with shock. Her mother's face was pale, and her eyes were full of sorrow as she looked at Ada. Ada's mind flashed to a memory she didn't even know she had. A voice, the leader's voice, saying to her mother, "You must bring her into the sisterhood of the moon, or you will pay the price." Ada's mother had been trying to protect her all along. She had tried to save her with warnings, slapping the chocolate away, hoping that would be enough. But now, it was too late.